Connor and Liam Brookes weren't just brothers. They were the ruthless architects behind one of Britain's most violent county lines, drug empires. From the tough streets of Toxteth, they built a network fueled by fear, betrayal, and the exploitation of children. But when a teenage runner collapsed near a train station, a single CCTV clip set off a chain of events that would expose their deadly secrets and unravel their family from the inside out. Connor and Liam Brookes were born and raised in the heart of Toxteth, a rough and forgotten neighborhood in Liverpool. The streets around them were lined with crumbling brick houses, graffiti-covered walls, and empty lots where children once played but now only gathered in small, suspicious groups. The community had long suffered from poverty, unemployment, and a deep sense of abandonment. For the Brookes family, life was never easy. Their father was in and out of prison, a shadowy figure who left when the boys were very young. Their mother struggled to hold things together, battling addiction that often left her absent for days at a time. With no steady guidance, Connor and Liam learned early on that survival meant relying on themselves and making quick decisions in a world where trust was a rare commodity. From an early age, both boys understood that normal opportunities were not designed for them. School was a struggle, discipline was strict but often inconsistent, and the lure of the streets was ever present. Toxteth's reputation as a hotspot for gang activity meant that young boys like Connor and Liam were exposed to violence and crime as part of everyday life. Small-time theft, drug running, and fighting were ways to gain respect and protection. By the time they were teenagers, the brothers had already been involved in petty crimes, stealing from local shops, breaking into cars and running drugs on street corners. These early offenses were never random acts. They were survival tactics, each action carefully calculated to avoid serious consequences, but build influence in their community. Connor, the older of the two, quickly became known for his sharp mind and ability to stay calm under pressure. While Liam was more impulsive and quick to anger, Connor's quiet determination earned him respect among older criminals. He studied the local drug scene closely, noticing patterns and weaknesses. Liam's reputation grew as the enforcer, a boy who would not hesitate to use violence to keep people in line. The combination of Connor's planning and Liam's muscle made them a formidable team, even among seasoned gang members. They were often seen together, moving through the streets with purpose, speaking in hushed tones that hinted at bigger plans. Despite the bleak environment, the brothers held on to a vision that went beyond the backstreets of Liverpool. They wanted more than quick cash and temporary power. They craved control and a lasting empire. It was around this time that they began to learn about the emerging county lines drug trade, a system where city gangs expanded their influence into rural towns by using children to transport and sell drugs. The county lines model offered anonymity, less police attention, and huge profits. For two young men like Connor and Liam, it was an opportunity to break out of the cycle they were trapped in. Their first attempts were small but bold. They started recruiting vulnerable teenagers from local schools, offering them money and protection in exchange for running drugs outside Liverpool. Many of these kids came from broken homes or had few prospects, making them easy to manipulate. The brothers trained them like soldiers, enforcing strict rules and punishing disobedience harshly. They set up communication networks using burner phones and secured safe houses in quiet neighborhoods outside the city. The business grew fast, and with every successful delivery, their reputation expanded beyond Liverpool's borders. But power came with risks. Rival gangs noticed their rise and tried to challenge them. The police began to monitor unusual activity in areas where the Brookes network was expanding. Still, the brothers pushed forward, driven by ambition and a ruthless desire to succeed. To Connor and Liam, the streets of Toxteth were no longer the limit. They were just the beginning of something far bigger. Their childhoods, shaped by hardship and neglect, had forged them into dangerous criminals whose reach would soon stretch across Britain. After gaining a foothold in Liverpool's drug scene, Connor and Liam Brookes quickly realized that the traditional street-level dealing would only get them so far. They needed to expand, to grow their influence beyond the boundaries of Toxteth and Liverpool itself. The answer came through the county lines system, a criminal method that was transforming drug trafficking across the UK. County lines involved city gangs, sending drugs into smaller towns and rural areas, often using vulnerable young people as couriers to move the product discreetly. For the Brookes brothers, it was an opportunity to build a larger empire with less direct exposure to law enforcement. The brothers wasted no time putting their plan into action. They began recruiting teenagers who were often overlooked by the system, kids from broken homes, those struggling at school, or simply desperate for money. These young people were easy to control. Connor used promises of quick cash, protection, and belonging to lure them in, while Liam enforced strict discipline, through intimidation and violence. The Brookes operation ran like a military unit. Loyalty was rewarded, but betrayal was met with brutal consequences. This structure ensured that even the youngest runners understood their place and the dangers of stepping out of line. Communication was key to their expansion. The brothers set up networks using burner phones that constantly changed numbers, making it hard for police to track them. They developed coded language and used social media to coordinate shipments and payments without raising suspicion. Connor's sharp mind was behind these systems, while Liam kept a watchful eye on discipline and security. They established safe houses in towns like Chester, Wrexham, and Blackpool, which served as bases where runners could stay, stash drugs, and collect money. These hubs allowed the brothers to spread their influence rapidly across northern England and even into parts of Wales. As the operation grew, so did the risks. The Brookes network did not operate quietly. They used threats to intimidate rival dealers and community members, and kidnappings to send a message to those who resisted or tried to break away. One case involved a teenager who tried to escape the network, but was caught and held for several days, forced to deliver drugs before being released. The violence was calculated, meant to keep control through fear as much as loyalty. The brothers' reputation for ruthlessness spread alongside their business, making it clear that crossing them could have deadly consequences. Despite the growing danger, the profits soared. The county lines model was incredibly lucrative, because it allowed the Brookes brothers to sell drugs in areas with less police presence and less competition. They supplied heroin, crack cocaine, and cannabis, all in high demand across the towns they targeted. With cash flooding in, they reinvested in technology, weapons, and new recruits. The brothers moved beyond simple street dealing into money laundering and building connections with suppliers in Liverpool's docks and international contacts, creating a fully fledged criminal enterprise. However, the expansion also meant they were creating a much bigger target for law enforcement. Police forces across multiple counties started sharing intelligence on patterns linked to county lines, gangs, identifying the use of children as couriers, and investigating rising drug-related deaths. For the Brookes brothers, this increased scrutiny meant they had to constantly adapt their methods, stay ahead of surveillance, and manage internal threats. Yet neither Connor nor Liam showed any sign of slowing down. The dream of a criminal empire was becoming a dangerous reality, and the cost of that ambition would soon become clear. It was a cold and rainy Tuesday morning in March 2022 when a piece of CCTV footage caught the attention of authorities and ignited a nationwide outcry. The clip showed a teenage boy stumbling off a train at Crewe Station, looking unsteady as he shuffled through the crowd. Moments later he collapsed near the ticket barriers and was unable to get back up. Emergency services rushed to the scene, but it was too late. The boy was pronounced dead shortly after, and toxicology reports confirmed the horrifying cause. He had swallowed a balloon filled with heroin, which had burst inside him. The boy was only 14 years old. The footage spread rapidly across social media, drawing intense public attention to the dangers of county lines drug trafficking. His death was a tragic reminder of how young lives were being sacrificed in a growing and ruthless criminal system. The image of that collapsed child at the train station became a symbol of a problem far larger than one boy or one city. It was a snapshot of a national crisis, but behind the headlines, police were already digging deeper, determined to trace the boy's last movements and uncover who was responsible. Investigators discovered that the boy had traveled from Liverpool, a city long known for its struggles with gangs and drug crime. More importantly, his train ticket had been bought with cash at a station only a short distance from the Brookes brothers' home turf in Toxteth. This was the first clear link between the tragic death and a criminal network police had been watching for months. The boy had been one of many children the Brookes brothers had recruited to move drugs on their behalf, part of a well-organized system that stretched far beyond Liverpool's streets. Detectives started piecing together the boy's movements before he boarded the train. He had been seen with a group of teenagers known to police as runners, young couriers who transported drugs and money between cities and rural towns. These runners were often victims themselves, caught in cycles of exploitation and violence. The Brookes brothers used fear and control to keep them in line, threatening consequences not only for the kids but for their families as well. This chilling level of manipulation turned children into disposable tools in a deadly business. The case soon became the focus of a multi-agency task force, involving local police, national crime units, child protection services. Officers worked around the clock, using surveillance, phone intercepts, and informants to track down the network responsible. They identified a series of safe houses, hidden stash points, and communication lines linking the boys in Liverpool to dealers and users across the north of England. As the investigation unfolded, the dark extent of the Brookes brothers' operation began to emerge. Yet, the tragic death at Crewe was just the beginning. The incident forced law enforcement to prioritize the case like never before, intensifying pressure on the Brookes network. Police raids and arrests followed in neighboring towns, but the brothers remained elusive. Their operation was well hidden, designed to avoid detection. Every time officers thought they were closing in, the network shifted, routes changed, runners were replaced, and cash flowed through new channels. What made this case different was the growing public awareness and outrage. Media coverage sparked debates on the role of social services, the failure of the education system to protect vulnerable children, and the urgent need for tougher laws against county lines gangs. But for the officers chasing the Brookes brothers, the focus was clear: bring down a ruthless organization before more young lives were lost. As the investigation intensified, police zeroed in on the Brookes family home, searching for evidence and hoping for a breakthrough. But what they found there would shock them and change the course of the entire case. The death of a single child had opened a door to a much darker and more complex story, a story that reached far beyond Liverpool's gritty backstreets. The death of the young boy at Crewe Station sent shockwaves through law enforcement, pushing the investigation into over. Police forces from multiple counties joined together in a coordinated effort to dismantle the Brookes brothers' growing empire. This multi-agency operation combined intelligence from local detectives, the National Crime Agency, and child protection teams. Undercover officers were placed in towns across the northwest to infiltrate the network of runners and dealers connected to the Brookes gang. It was clear the brothers had built something far larger than a typical street-level drug operation. It was a well-oiled machine that stretched across regions, using fear and control to maintain power. As the undercover officers moved deeper into the system, they began to identify key figures and routes within the network. It wasn't long before many of these threads led directly back to Liverpool. The city had long been a hub for county lines activity, but the Brookes brothers had taken control in a way that no one had seen before. Their operation was efficient and ruthless, and it had infiltrated communities that had never before been touched by this level of criminal enterprise. Despite the pressure mounting from law enforcement, the brothers showed no sign of panic. Liam, in particular, grew increasingly paranoid. He started to shadow their own people, suspicious that someone inside the network might be leaking information. His unpredictable temper and violent outbursts created a tense atmosphere among their recruits. This paranoia was both a strength and a weakness, and Liam blended into the sprawling British expatriate community along the Costa del Sol, a region notorious for harboring fugitives and criminal enterprises. They invested in luxury apartments under assumed names and set up front businesses, hoping to launder money from their drug empire while maintaining a low profile. Despite the sun and beaches, their lives remained under constant stress, knowing that law enforcement agencies were closing in and that betrayal could come from anywhere, even within their own circle. Meanwhile, back in the UK, the investigation had not stalled. British police continued to dismantle the Brookes network piece by piece. The arrests of low-level dealers and runners uncovered hidden stash houses and financial records that linked back to the brothers' operation. The intelligence gathered revealed that the brothers had maintained communication with their UK contacts even after fleeing, coordinating shipments and managing finances remotely. This extended network complicated efforts to cut off their influence and profits. The revelation that Connor and Liam were still running their operation from abroad added urgency to the international investigation. Europol coordinated with Spanish law enforcement to monitor the brothers' activities, track their movements, and gather evidence that could support extradition requests. Surveillance teams were deployed, tapping phones and following associates, but Connor and Liam remained elusive, often using layers of intermediaries to hide their involvement. Tensions within the brothers' inner circle began to surface. The pressure of being fugitives in a foreign country, coupled with the constant threat of arrest, caused fractures among their closest allies. Some began to question the brothers' leadership, fearing that continued exposure could bring down the entire network. Rumors spread that one of the brothers' trusted lieutenants was cooperating with police, feeding information in exchange for immunity. This atmosphere of mistrust echoed the paranoia that had once gripped the gang in Liverpool. But now it was magnified in a foreign land where escape options were limited. Despite the challenges, the brothers managed to maintain control over parts of the drug operation. They leveraged contacts in Spain and other European countries to facilitate drug shipments, expanding their reach beyond the UK. Their network included not only runners and dealers but also corrupt officials and money launderers who helped keep the business running smoothly. The Brookes brothers had transformed from street-level criminals into international crime figures, demonstrating adaptability and cunning that baffled many investigators. However, law enforcement's persistence paid off. A breakthrough came when Spanish police, acting on intelligence from British counterparts, discovered a warehouse linked to the brothers. Inside, they found drugs, weapons, and financial records that exposed the scale of their operations. This raid intensified the manhunt and placed the brothers under even greater scrutiny. As the walls closed in, the brothers faced an impossible choice: continue running a high-risk criminal empire or risk capture and extradition to face justice back home. Unbeknownst to the investigators, the investigation was about to reveal a stunning family secret, one that would shatter everything they thought they knew about the Brookes brothers and change the course of the case forever. The breakthrough that Spanish police achieved at the warehouse was just the beginning of a revelation that would shake the entire investigation. Among the confiscated items, officers found a series of encrypted documents and personal notes belonging to Connor Brookes. These papers detailed not only drug shipments and financial transactions, but also hinted at a deeper, darker family secret. As British and Spanish authorities worked together to decrypt and analyze the files, the true complexity of the Brookes family's involvement in the criminal empire began to emerge. At the heart of the discovery was evidence that their youngest sibling, Jamie Brookes, had played a far more significant role than anyone had suspected. Jamie was only 16 when the network started, and until now, police had believed him to be a victim, just another teenager exploited as a drug runner. But the documents suggested otherwise. Jamie was not just a foot soldier, he was a key lieutenant, trusted by Connor and Liam to manage parts of the operation and handle sensitive communications. His involvement blurred the lines between victim and perpetrator, complicating the investigation and adding a tragic dimension to the story. Further digging uncovered a series of messages showing that Jamie had been coerced and manipulated by his older brothers from an early age. Connor had taken on a mentor-like role, grooming Jamie to take over parts of the business, while Liam enforced loyalty through threats and punishment. The brothers' family dynamic was one of control and fear, a toxic mixture that had trapped Jamie in a cycle of criminality from which escape seemed impossible. This revelation cast a new light on the family. What had seemed like a simple story of two brothers running a drug operation was now a tangled web of manipulation and betrayal. The investigation also uncovered a chilling incident involving Jamie that had been kept secret. Months before the boy's death at Cruise Station, Jamie had been involved in the kidnapping of a young runner suspected of leaking information to the police. The victim had been held captive in a safe house for several days, subjected to threats and violence before being released. The evidence revealed that the brothers' willingness to harm even their own blood was part of how they maintained control. The family ties that might have saved Jamie only bound him tighter to the criminal world. As news of Jamie's involvement leaked, it sparked outrage and sympathy in equal measure. Media outlets painted a complex picture of the Brookes family, a portrait of brokenness and brutality. Public opinion shifted as people grappled with the idea that even children caught in these gangs could become perpetrators. Child protection agencies and social workers renewed calls for better interventions to prevent young people from being pulled into such dangerous networks. For the police, the discovery of Jamie's role was a turning point. It provided new leverage in their efforts to bring down the entire Brookes operation. Investigators hoped that offering Jamie protection and leniency might encourage him to testify against his older brothers, but gaining his trust was difficult. Years of fear and loyalty had left deep scars. Jamie's cooperation would be crucial to unraveling the final layers of the criminal network. Meanwhile, Connor and Liam remained on the run in Spain, unaware that their carefully hidden family secret was now exposed to the very forces hunting them. The case had evolved from a violent gang takedown into a tragic family saga. A story not just about drugs and crime, but about manipulation, loyalty and betrayal within the Brookes bloodline. As police closed in, the brothers faced a future where the consequences of their actions would finally catch up with them, threatening to destroy the empire they had built and the family they had torn apart. The arrest of Jamie Brookes came sooner than anyone expected. Under heavy protection and with assurances from law enforcement, Jamie agreed to cooperate, providing a detailed account of the inner workings of the Brookes brothers' criminal empire. His testimony became the linchpin in the case, painting a grim picture of life inside the network, one where violence, fear and control were used to keep the operation running smoothly. Jamie described how Connor orchestrated the logistics from behind the scenes, ensuring the flow of drugs and money, while Liam enforced discipline through intimidation and brutal punishment. Jamie's revelations uncovered the extent of the brothers' ruthlessness. He spoke of nights when rival dealers were violently targeted, often disappearing for days before their bodies were found. He recounted stories of runners who tried to escape, only to be tracked down and forcibly returned, or worse. The operation was more than a drug gang. It was a violent militia that ruled through terror, with no regard for the lives of the children it exploited. This testimony gave police the evidence they needed to build a comprehensive case against Connor and Liam. Simultaneously, the international manhunt for the Brookes brothers intensified. Spanish authorities, working closely with British police, increased surveillance on known associates and monitored communications in a bid to locate them. The brothers, realizing the net was tightening, began moving frequently between properties along the Costa del Sol, relying on trusted contacts and paying for protection from local criminals. But their careful plans started to unravel as the pressure mounted. A breakthrough came when a tip-off from a former associate placed Connor in a small town near Malaga. Police moved quickly, coordinating a raid that resulted in Connor's arrest. His capture was a major victory, but also raised new questions about Liam, who remained at large. The brothers had always been inseparable, and Connor's arrest seemed to shake Liam's confidence and control over the network. With Connor in custody, British authorities pushed for extradition. The process was complicated by legal battles and appeals, but the evidence gathered, including Jamie's testimony, ensured the case against him was strong. Meanwhile, investigators turned their attention to Liam, whose violent reputation made him one of the most wanted fugitives in Europe. His disappearance only fueled fears that he might resort to desperate measures. The investigation also revealed the devastating human cost behind the Brookes brothers' empire. Families shattered, communities terrorized, and dozens of young lives lost or ruined. Police uncovered evidence linking the gang to several unsolved cases of drug-related deaths and violent assaults, some involving children coerced into dangerous roles. The operation had left scars across northern England and beyond. Public reaction to the arrests was intense. Many hailed the police for finally bringing down one of the country's most dangerous county lines gangs. Yet, there was also a deeper conversation about how young people like Jamie Brookes became involved in such networks, and what could have been done to prevent it. The story highlighted failures in social services, education, and community support systems that left vulnerable children exposed to exploitation. As Liam continued to evade capture, the investigation took on a new urgency. Authorities warned that he remained dangerous, capable of extreme violence, and urged the public to remain vigilant. The manhunt stretched across borders, involving multiple agencies and countries, in a race to bring the last Brookes brother to justice. Behind bars, Connor began cooperating with police, offering insights that helped dismantle the remaining parts of the network. His cooperation opened doors to further arrests and financial seizures, yet the shadow of Liam loomed large, until the day the manhunt ended in a way no one had anticipated, shocking everyone and revealing the final tragic chapter of the Brookes family saga. The manhunt for Liam Brookes had become one of the most intense and prolonged in recent British criminal history. Police forces across Europe collaborated tirelessly, sharing intelligence and tracking his movements from Spain to the southern coast of France. Despite his reputation for violence and cunning, Liam proved to be a master of evasion. He used safe houses, false identities, and an ever-changing network of contacts to stay one step ahead of law enforcement. His disappearance sparked widespread fear, not just because of his crimes, but because of what he might do when cornered. While the hunt went on, investigators uncovered a startling development that shook the case to its core. A confidential informant within Liam's closest circle revealed that the fugitive was not acting alone in his final days on the run. Instead, he was receiving help from someone closest to him, someone from within the Brookes family. The revelation was unexpected and painful. Their own mother, Sandra Brookes, had been secretly aiding Liam's escape efforts. Sandra's involvement was a devastating twist. Far from the innocent bystander, she had long played a hidden role in the brothers' operations. Police found evidence that she had helped launder money, passed messages, and even provided shelter for Liam during the manhunt. Her motivations were complex, a mix of maternal loyalty, fear, and entanglement in a world she could no longer control. For investigators, this betrayal within the family added layers of complexity and tragedy to an already dark story. The discovery prompted a renewed effort to locate Sandra, who had vanished amid the chaos. Authorities believed that without her support, Liam's options for escape would narrow dramatically. Surveillance intensified on known Brookes associates and family contacts, hoping to intercept communications or catch a glimpse of her. The public watched closely as the investigation exposed a family torn apart by crime and deception. Meanwhile, Liam's desperation grew. Reports emerged of him resorting to increasingly risky behavior, traveling under false names, meeting with criminal contacts in remote locations, and using violence to silence those who might betray him. Law enforcement officers believed he was preparing for a final confrontation or a desperate bid for freedom. The stakes had never been higher. In a dramatic turn, a tip-off from a local informant in a small French village led to the discovery of Liam's hideout. A coordinated raid was planned, involving both French and British police. The operation was swift and efficient. Liam was captured without incident, ending the months-long pursuit. His arrest brought relief to communities that had lived under the shadow of his violence for years. Shortly after, Sandra Brookes was located and arrested in a remote area nearby. Her arrest was met with mixed emotions: sympathy for a mother trapped in a terrible situation, and outrage at her complicity in sustaining a dangerous criminal network. Her cooperation with investigators became crucial, revealing details about the brothers' operation and the family dynamics that had allowed it to flourish. The final chapter of the Brookes brothers' saga was unfolding, marked by heartbreak, betrayal, and justice. The case exposed the dark realities behind county lines gangs, the exploitation of children, the destruction of families, and the far-reaching impact of organized crime. But it also showed the resilience of law enforcement and communities determined to fight back. With all key players in custody, attention turned to the trial, which promised to be one of the most significant legal battles against county lines crime in recent memory. The story of the Brookes brothers was no longer just a tale of violence and crime. It had become a powerful cautionary narrative about the price of loyalty, the complexity of family ties, and the urgent need to protect vulnerable